that's why states are so important, because, attract into states or even falling in love, or every state experience open us to possibilities and experiences that usually are blocked. But then we can make that state more and more into a permanent stage. And to do that in relationship with a partner is just the most exciting thing on the planet, right? Not only the physical sex, but also what some people, Barbara Marx Hubbard, called suprasexuality.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Patrick Cook. Welcome to Being. My guest today is Martin Ucik. Martin is the author of 2 books, Integral Relationships, A Manual for Men, and Sex, Purpose, Love, Couples in Integral Relationships Creating a Better World. His work builds on Ken Wilber's integral theory by applying it specifically to human love relationships. Now he trains integral relationship practitioners, professionals, and group facilitators, and offers private trainings and consultations for singles and couples. Martin Ucik, welcome to Being. If you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the show and get a new episode delivered directly to your device every Friday. And as always, I love hearing from you. So please do rate and review the episode on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whichever platform you prefer. Also, I'm proud to announce that the show is now available on YouTube. And you can also follow us on our new Instagram page at Being with Patrick Cook. For show notes and more information, head on over to being-podcast.com. Now, on with the show. Martin Ucik, welcome to Being. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
This is very exciting. So I came across your work only recently online, and I reached out to you on Instagram, I believe it was, and we started a short conversation, and very quickly we arrived on this podcast. So to be quite honest and transparent, I haven't read your 2 books, but I have reviewed your work, and I found it very fascinating and very interesting. So I'm really excited to dive in with it about it today with you. So your new book is Sex, Purpose, and Love, Couples in Integral Relationships Creating a Better World. Just the title alone is just fantastic and just speaks to me so deeply. But as I understand it, it applies Ken Wilber's integral theory of human growth and potentials to the areas of sex, purpose, and love, which is fascinating. And in full transparency, again, I'm familiar with Ken's work, but haven't done a real deep dive into integral theory. And I actually ordered my first Ken Wilber book the other day. Yeah. But again, I am familiar with his work just through other people's work. But that might be a good place to start if some of my audience are not as familiar with Ken's work as well. Would you be willing to give us sort of like a brief overview, if possible, of what Ken Wilber's integral theory is?
Yeah, that he put in 22 books over 40 years.
Wow, what a prolific...
Yeah. How many hours do we have, right?
Right. It's tough to squeeze in. But if you had to condense it down into one summary.
I mean, Ken was once asked, what is the integral model good for? And he said it's for alleviating human suffering by understanding all the facets of what it means to be human. And there are basically 5 big facets that he identified by just looking at the perennial wisdoms from the East. So he looked at what has endured for thousands of years, right? More from a spiritual, mystical perspective. And what would the most qualified scientists in the West agree on as relative scientific truths. And he integrated all of that into his model. So it's really this East meets West, spirituality meets psychology, meets science, meets aesthetics, meets art, and all of that into a model. And the 4 elements that are also relevant for relationships are what they now also call the 4 dimensions of our being, that we have an interior self, a consciousness, and we have an exterior body. And that body lives in a physical material environment, like your surfboard behind you and your microphone and but also nature, right? And we can also include nature. And it also lives in a cultural context. And Habermas, which inspired Wilber a lot, and me too, he says, well, ask yourself, do you think the world is living more in you, or are you living in the world, right? I mean, language and our beliefs and pretty much everything we know, we basically just learn from others, and we just take it for granted. And when we get into a love relationship, and only in a love relationship do these 4 dimensions get in intimate contact with each other, right? Through our sexuality and who takes out the trash and how do you spend your money and what values you have to share. There's, even if you're in a group, right, setting, you usually never have this intimate contact of these 4 dimensions. And that's the foundation of Wilber's model and the integral relationship model. The second element is that we develop, so it's kind of like a hierarchical model of natural hierarchies. And in the core part is consciousness development. And, some people are familiar with that. There's often in what we call the green meme, they don't like hierarchies at all, so they don't even like natural hierarchies, like letters form words and words form sentences, and they would just like to get away with all kind of hierarchies. And this and Wilber usually uses an 8-step hierarchy. You can look at it from human evolution, from the earliest human being the archaic stage, and then get in the tribal magical stage. Then so like in a heroic egocentric stage, then in a religious agriculture, patriarchy, mythic stage, then in a modern stage, modern science, everything where we would be modern in front of it, and then a postmodern pluralistic, sensitive self, earth-oriented, humanistic. I mean, humanistic is also the scientific, but, human animal rights, feminism, elevating the feminine. These are the first 6 stages that are fairly common in most societies, not in all societies. I'm in Turkey right now, so the green stage is just slowly emerging here, while in Northern California, where I lived for 20 years, the green stage is in full bloom. There may be 20-30% of the population. And then the integral stage is the next one that, simply put, integrates all the healthy aspects of the 6 previous stages while transcending, going beyond their limited views and perspectives. And then there is the 8th stage, a transpersonal stage, post-lingual, the constructed through words and things, sense of self. So that's the second element in Wilber's model, and there are other developmental lines. I use the spiritual line of development with 5 stages of spiritual development, 5 stages of sexual development, and 5 stages of animus complex development. That's a Jungian concept about the repressed or split of feminine in males and the split of masculine in females, which is then projected on the opposite sex. That's something, by the way, that Wilber has not integrated in his model because he's not a big fan of Carl Jung.
All right.
But of course, I have tons of stuff not integrated that Ken has.
Yes.
And then the next one is states, and I already touched on stages. So temporary states of anger or falling in love, for example, right? We know that's a state experience. We go through different phases, even though we sometimes wish that state of being madly in love with someone and everything works great usually doesn't last forever. So everything that doesn't last forever, sometimes that's good, sometimes not so good, right? Drug-induced stage, sleeping, waking, dreamless sleep, they're all temporary states. And then the 4th one is types, personality types. So Wilber and the integral people are usually great on the Enneagram, but also Myers-Briggs, and I bring in the 5 love languages, which you're probably familiar with, and
yes, I am.
The people who are viewing this. So
yes,
and then the last one what did I miss here?
I'm not
Quadrants,
sure.
levels, lines. Oh, I skipped the lines. So
Okay.
the lines are the different development lines that I already mentioned. I picked sexual, spiritual, and anima animus.
Right.
And then states is the fourth, and the fifth is types. And so now we have quite a bit to work with, right?
Yes.
Because all of these have incredible depth, and you can go as deep and as wide with these. I mean, just looking at these four dimensions of being, Immanuel Kant wrote 3 huge volumes, right, that addressed one of these 3 dimensions, or
Right.
etc. So that's the model, and the basic idea is to be balanced and harmonized in these 4 dimensions of your relationship, to be at a similar level of consciousness and sexual, spiritual, and anima animus complex development to make a relationship work. So and to understand your types, and to accept that your relationship goes to different states, for example, or sometimes a female goes through her menstrual cycle and goes through different state experiences, and et cetera, and so that's basically where I started with. So that's the sex part. And that's also Wilber's model in
Yes.
in 10 minutes, in 10 minutes or less.
I will applaud you for that summary, because that was not an easy ask, and it's quite a robust model and comprehensive. And I'm so impressed that you've been able to take that model and advance it even further using your own modalities, specifically around relationships, which I'd love to get into in one sec. But there is one thing that you mentioned early on in that description about the nature of consciousness, and how much we're influenced by our environment, how much we're conditioned by our environment, and how much that creates the amount of the world living within us, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're born, we're basically these innocent light beings, and we become conditioned as an evolutionary advantage to make us more adaptive to our environments, as I understand, right? And so when you take a human being, and you like the same human being, and they grow up in, say, the United States, or in a tribal community in Africa or somewhere, they're gonna be different people by the time they reach adulthood. And so my question is, what is the fundamental nature of consciousness? If you subtract all of these influences, all this conditioning, what's left? What do we begin with? Where does the initial consciousness develop from?
That's such an unfair question, because nobody has an answer to that.
Well, that's why I'm curious. I know there's no answer, but I'm curious what your take is, considering
what's my answer to the unanswered question. So the best I can give you is that consciousness regulates information flow in the brain, and that's not really my answer. I think that's William James.
Right.
But it is really how we're sensing beings, right? We perceive the world through our senses, and through our meaning-making structures in a way. How do we interpret words, and what do we consider in moment to moment as important and not important from what we can become aware of? I mean, one thing is, what can we be aware of? Some people read the New York Times like me every day, so I'm aware of different things than if somebody reads the Bible every day, or listens to. I mean, we now know we all live in our information bubbles and things like that.
Yes, we do.
But my level of consciousness basically determines which articles do I read, what am I interested in, what do I think is important, what do I pay attention to, and what do I do with this information. And that would be my definition of what consciousness does. It basically determines what do you hear, what do you see, right? What do you feel, what do you think, and that's not necessarily inside your brain, right? Some people think consciousness is not even inside your body. I mean, nobody knows how this works, that is, firing billions of synapses in your brain, can create an idea about the world. And this regulating of information flow in your brain is what we would consider consciousness. And a baby is basically unconscious because it's not yet consciously selecting, right? It's instinctual, right? And
Right.
totally fused with its environment. And then as we become self-conscious, what we are aware of is very limited, right? We cannot
Yeah.
read books, and we don't understand. And then there is an increase in complexity. You could say an increase in consciousness means an increase in complexity and freedom and choice of, if you want, controlling. That's maybe not the right word, but to have more freedom around choosing which information you allow to enter your awareness and what you do with it.
Yes. And there's so
Sometimes
much.
I compare it a little bit like with ice cream, right? If you only have the choice between vanilla and chocolate, right? That's your level of choice, then, or your consciousness, then
Yeah.
you choose between the two. And as you become more conscious, you see more and more options. And now you have 20 different flavors. And so some people, they even go like, well, I don't want to become more conscious because it seems like relationships and life becomes more and more complicated. And it's true.
It's true. Yeah.
People who are highly
True.
conscious often feel very alone because they're no longer understood
I can
about their
relate to that.
concern
Yeah.
than people who have a more simple idea about how the world works. Well, a woman should be at home and cook and clean and get children, right? And the man should kind of support her, and the guy should make the money and protect her.
Yes.
And here we have a very simple men are from Mars, women are from Venus relationship model that worked perfectly for my parents. They were blissfully happy for 50 years until my dad passed away. And my mom often goes, why do you guys have all these problems in your relationship? I don't understand. It's like,
It was
yeah,
simple.
Mom.
Why did you make it complicated?
Yeah, you went to school for 7 years and never, did anything else than being at home and raising kids and singing in the
Yes.
church choir. And she didn't expect more from life.
Yes. Yeah. As human beings, we crave certainty, and that's why one way to keep it simple. Keep it simple. But for me, that was never enough, and I think as a species, it's not enough. We need to be living more consciously because there are major problems that are the result of our unconsciousness, in my opinion. Just to wrap up on that, the way I sort of feel is that there is a field, a general field, maybe it's the quantum field of consciousness that we tap into as sort of antennae. Each individual is an antennae that's tapping into a collective consciousness, and then, like you say, we're distilling and discerning what information is relevant to our experience and how to process it in order to survive. It's fascinating.
First, it has to go into our awareness, right?
Exactly.
So that's already tricky. What gets filtered out as irrelevant.
Yeah, and most gets filtered out, frankly. And that's actually, I was discussing with a friend the other day about psychedelics and how it sort of removes the filter, and sort of it opens the floodgates to information of consciousness coming through. And that's why you're catatonic and you can't process anything because you're overwhelmed. But it also just gives you that sort of glimpse into the abyss, into infinity, that there is so much more, and then it helps you navigate your day-to-day life if you're able to integrate that new information.
That's why states are so important, because drug-induced states or even falling in love or every state experience open us to possibilities and experiences that usually are blocked by when we're in our normal state, but then we can make that state more and more into a permanent stage through mindfulness meditation and tantric sexuality, and we can really open our brain. Obviously, that, and
100%.
And to do that in relationship with a partner is just the most exciting thing on the planet, right? Not only the physical sex, but also what some people, Barbara Marx Hubbard, called suprasexuality.
Yes.
Right? So like that.
I love it. So this is a great segue into discussing your new book, Sex Powered Love. And I read the summary on your website, and it was just beautiful. It says it addresses the complexity of love relationships in the 21st century and the importance of healthy, sustainable love relationships to solve global challenges that humanity are facing. That is just fabulous. I'd love you to just unpack that and what that looks like for you.
Yeah. So the purpose part started in a way with my parents, if you will, right? Where my father and all the males, and historically, males had all the power, but all the responsibility. Sometimes women forget that they also had the responsibility. So, man had all the power, right? Well, they also took on a lot of responsibility. Let's not forget that. And risk, right?
Yeah.
And the women, basically chose men who did things that were by and large in service of them and their offspring. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right?
Of course.
all the providing and the protecting and inventing cars and airplanes and whatnot, right? If women wouldn't have rewarded that in some way, get the guy with the red Porsche, not the guy with the old Fiat, right? To make an extreme example, right? And that no longer really works that way because, of course, now females also have entered the public domain. And if we just continue, rewarding the most abusive and aggressive men, right, abusive and destructive from an environmental sense, then, we really have a problem. And so males and females can share 3 different forms of purpose. And hopefully I'm not going too fast here. We all live our biological purpose, which is called imperative, to survive and to procreate and to form groups and seek quality of life. And again, that was very segregated it became very segregated in the mythic stage and in the modern stage. And then some people also awaken to what I call transformational purpose, which is our purpose to learn and to heal and to grow and to awaken. And again, in the past, that was often very segregated and mainly reserved for males. Right? The males were the spiritual masters and the monks. Of course, there were also nuns, but they went to schools and things like that, while the females were relegated to reproductive capabilities. And then there's something I call our transcendental purpose, which we have this interesting genetic predisposition for empathy, cognitive intelligence, artistic creativity or aesthetics, and kinesthetic abilities. Again, the expression of these talents were mainly reserved for males in the past. And what my vision is for future relationships, which is also already slowly emerging, is that males and females become equal co-creators in the domestic and in the public sphere with equal rights and responsibilities. So it's not that the responsibilities in the public sphere get relegated to males and to masculinized females in some cases, right? Who have to be very masculine. And the domestic sphere is still relegated to females, but that we share this, what I call transcendental purpose, to create more truth, more goodness, more beauty, and more functioning in the world that is sustainable and peaceful. And I mean, that sounds like beautiful or maybe easy, but who says what is truth? Who says what's beautiful? Who says what's functional? And who says what's beautiful? And I think we need a new form of dialectic. So drawing from Jürgen Habermas again, that's not just between males making masculine validity claims in the coffee houses of Vienna traditionally, right? It's like but that males and females, even on the smallest level of social holons, get into discourse, making feminine and masculine validity claims to what is good, true, beautiful, and functional, and then enact that in the world.
Yes.
And that is sort of like my vision around the purpose part of the book.
I just want to, what you mentioned there about biological versus transcendental purpose, I think is fascinating and so true when I read that. The biological being more survival and instinctual purpose, and transcendental, procreating.
And also quality of life seeking. So wanting the big mansion and the boat and the luxury of flying around the world. That's all still part of the biological purpose, just to clarify that.
Right. And then the transcendental purpose, how would you define that?
Well, in the middle part is what I call the transformational purpose, which about 20% of the population, at least in Western, probably around the world, also have a desire to improve themselves in simply put, right, to heal and to learn and to grow and to awaken. Interestingly enough, 80% of the population roughly have no interest in that. Quite the contrary. They often say, oh, I don't want to have a guy who has any baggage, or I don't want a woman who's moody and bitchy or something like that, right? We imagine this kind of easygoing person, a partner, while the reality is we're all human becomings, right? We're not human beings, we're human becomings. And we all have our shit, and relationships are the best place to deal with that. But most people want to avoid any kind of like challenges in relationships. So in that stage, John Wellwood called it, we feel attracted to worthy opponents, so people who call us on our shit and who challenge us to realize our fullest human potential, not only in a materialistic survival quality of life-seeking way, but in a personal development way. And out of that emerges the transcendental purpose. And I know these words are somewhat abstract, but transcendental means it goes beyond the biological and transformational purpose. And it transcends also the ego as a separate sense of self, because the transcendental purpose is innate in our soul, in our genetic makeup. I write a lot about how this latest research on genes informing our talents, and how skill development allows us to express these talents. And then, but that's not enough. From there, we need to awaken or go beyond the ego to put our talents into service of the well-being of others and the biological purpose.
100%.
So that's and this decision, right? That's the tricky part in philosophy, to say it again, to decide what is good, true, beautiful, and functional is done in the context, in dialogue, right? In exchange between, at the smallest level, between two people who then maybe have an agreement what this is, and then share it with other couples or with other people. And then out of that, is a more sustainable and peaceful world, at least in theory, emerging.
This
where we do not relegate like the dirty stuff to the males, right? You go out there and do the dirty work, and I'm not the peaceful female, but that's co-created in the relationship.
So for me, what I'm hearing is, and you can let me know if this is an accurate map, but the biological sort of purpose is more sort of that unconscious evolutionary algorithm, and that moving more into consciousness goes through the transformation into full enlightenment, if I could air quote that, into the transcendental purpose. Does that map
stages of consciousness?
Stages of consciousness with the development of purpose. Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
One of the ways I define, because I work with clients a lot on finding their purpose and expressing their creativity. One of the ways I define life purpose is that creative expression of your truest, deepest essence. And the work is revealing and removing all the conditioning or the limiting beliefs or the trauma, anything that's getting in the way of that full expression of that deepest essence. One of the things that comes up though, as they move deeper into their essence, is okay, yes, I'm embodying this, but how does it map to the system that I need to show up in, this capitalist system where I still need to make money, I still need to put food on the table. Sometimes they don't align, because I work with a lot of artists who okay, yes, I'm expressing myself fully, but it's not being valued by the system in the same way that, say, a stockbroker or a lawyer would be, right? And so there's this disconnect between what's valued in the society and the person expressing their deepest essence. How do you reconcile those two?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say doing that in a healthy relationship makes it a little easier than being a solo artist.
Right.
And from there, first of all, I want to say, for some people, expressing being parents right? And
Yes.
raising children is their deepest essence.
100%.
And I have a lot of respect for that as a father of 4 daughters, by the
Yes,
way.
I'm a father as
right?
well. It's one of my
But
deepest.
in general, so if somebody says, that's my purpose, and then taking care of my grandchildren, taking care of my parents, there's nothing wrong with that if you do that
totally
in a
agree.
sustainable, healthy way.
Yes.
Some people feel called to just, to this personal growth and development path. Of course, you need a job because you don't get paid for doing that. You usually pay other people for doing that. And then, when you get in touch with your, what I call transformational, with your essence, right? With when your true talents awaken what you want to contribute to the world. I mean, in my training, I show these mind maps where I say, okay, here in the center is sort of like your core talent, or how, bring more beauty into the world through visual art or through music or poetry or whatever it is. But to find ways to express that actually serves other people in a way that they want to pay us for, and that may not be the ideal vision, right, that we have, but we, instead of making paintings, maybe we paint murals, and instead of being a big musician on stage, maybe we run a music school, or I think sometimes we need to be creative and maybe even, I don't want to say downscale, but apply it to something that also fills the functionality part, that it provides something that, and sometimes you have to go parallel. I mean, for many years, I had a day job that I'm not proud of, right? Because it was not aligned with my values.
Right.
And my excuse was always, and I did, that I invested the money I made there into the work that I finally now can do professionally. So sometimes it's also a thing where you have to go parallel until the other thing takes off. But this is I don't want to belittle that problem. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, and somewhat of a tragedy, in my opinion. Because there is a trade-off in order to fit in with the current value system, which values materialism and profit at all costs, and these things that don't align with our truest essence. It's really tragic when we have to compromise in any way just to fit into that system. But I agree, there you do need to sort of figure out how you can add value to that system in order to fund and help develop your truest essence to a place where you can get it, where now, okay, yes, I'm living in full expression, full abundance, I'm being remunerated for it. And that's, what I call sovereignty, is really, you've full control over your creative capacity and full independence and responsibility. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's also interesting. There's this guy, Brian Wetton. I like he has a lot of free stuff, and it's called Selling by Giving. And a lot of people are just also bad marketers, right? Not only don't they have a clear message, what value do they really provide, and know how to, market themselves. He has a fairly complex system. I just want to mention one thing.
Please do.
As long as you, or as long as you, and you already pointed to it, as long as your talent is something that expresses itself in a material way, that also allows people to make money with what you're selling them, right? It's an investment, or it's the tool that they can use, right? That is the easiest sell, because there's an immediate return on investment on the other side, or they feel, if you help people with information, right? I'll teach you how to do something. That's a little harder to sell. If you sell happiness in the widest sense, right, as a therapist or something like that, that's even a harder sell, because happiness is not really tangible, right? Information usually has more value. Look at Bloomberg, right? He became a billionaire just selling information. And the hardest sell is spirituality, right? Awakening, enlightenment, some esoteric, metaphysical. And oddly enough, most people, when they get in touch with their maybe true calling or essence, it's often sort of like the other way around, right? They often, and there's just only so much room for people who sell enlightenment in the widest sense, or awakening, and only so much room for people to sell happiness. And admittedly, some people are maybe sometimes feel a little bit overconfident about their abilities, right? What's your qualification? How long have you done that?
Yes. Yeah, this is all relevant for me, definitely, because I'm in that
Yeah.
sphere, and I've definitely run into a lot of those issues.
Yeah.
But I think when we're talking about life purpose, and you said it earlier, it has to come from fundamentally from a place of service. And so many people, when they're thinking about their life purpose, it's an ego thing. It's like, okay, what can I do for me? What's the best positioning? What's the best education for my benefit only? And I think that's fundamental to many of the world's problems we have, is this shell of an ego that we've all crawled into, not realizing the deeper connection with each other and with nature and the universe at large, where anything I do is deeply connected to everything else. There's no what's in it for me, because I'm externalizing harm whether I know it or not. And so when you get to that transcendental purpose, it has to be fundamentally as an act of service first, making the world more beautiful, more true, adding value, adding functionality, something that's intrinsically valuable, whether it fits into the capitalist system or not. So
and based on what the world is also ready for, right?
There's exactly
nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Exactly. And I think these ideas need to come to their time, because we're running out of time.
Yeah. And again, if you're in a partnership, right, there's also this, you probably feel that too. You feel, or, some people really feel drawn to delivering their essence, right? Or delivering what they feel passionate about. And they also need to market themselves. And often we get stuck between. And so if you have a partner, and two minds come together behind a shared vision and mission and purpose, it just becomes so much more powerful.
For sure.
And I'm good friends with Alex and Alison Gray, the painters. I don't know if you know them or know of them. And they lived that for 40 years. And they came to my talk in New York. I didn't even know who they were. 2011, and at the end somebody said, well, Martin, your vision, this is kind of unrealistic utopia. And then this woman got up and said, no, I'm here with my husband, and we're living that for 40 years. And then they
that's amazing.
Themselves to me. And I didn't even get it when the guy said, I'm Alex Gray. I said, like the famous artist. And he said, like the famous artist,
So is that the kind of thing that's developable, or did those people, were they attracted to each other initially because of a resonance with purpose, even if it wasn't well defined at the time? Is that something you can develop over time?
You can. We need to bring this in our awareness that there is an additional mate selection, right? In addition to the biological sexual selection process, that we also select our mate for shared transcendental purpose once we know what our transcendental purpose is.
Right.
And when they met, they were already artists, and they felt this strong pull towards each other. And that's not new in history. Lennon and McCartney, they were on that level, right? Soulmates, if you will.
Yeah.
And Hewlett and Packard and whatnot. There were many, some women, but mostly males, who were much more productive co-creators.
Right.
Like Bill Gates and forgot his name now. Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs and Mark Allen, I think was his name. He passed away a while ago. Yeah. So that, again, the idea is that couples, same-sex or opposite-sex heterosexual couples, become these co-creators, and it becomes much easier to live and manifest and also monetize. I hate that word, but make a living, maybe a nicer word. And also then, there isn't this like, let's face it, there's still a majority of women who want to have someone who's a strong protector, provider,
of course.
Much better provider than they are. And if they assume equal rights and responsibility also around the providing part, it takes a lot of burden of both sexes, where one is less dependent and the other one is less pressured, and maybe more is less in that case, where both living their purpose can be a smaller house and a smaller car. Everything can be smaller, what is good for the environment too. And in turn, you serve the world instead of taking from the world. So that's my couples in integral relationships, co-creating a better world part.
Oh, I love it. I think it's fascinating. And but one thing that's coming up for me that I've had this discussion many times actually with clients as well is that, as you said earlier, maybe up to 80% of people are still in the biological purpose phase,
Yeah.
which means a lot of people are getting married at that phase. And then what happens when, say, one of the partners is moving more into transformation, more into transcendental purpose, and the other isn't, and that creates a sort of disharmony or dissonance there, where
Yeah.
the one partner is like, hey, come on, you can do this too, and they're not stepping up to the plate.
Yeah.
How do you sort of rectify that? Is there, at one point one partner needs to move on and that ends up in divorce? Maybe that's for the best. I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean that's my story. That
Yeah,
I
me too.
had a great biological soulmate in my second wife and our 3 beautiful children, and
Yeah.
we still, when we get together, we get along fine. And when I became a sensitive New Age guy, usually it's the woman, but I became the snag in Northern California when I met
Snag, is that the acronym? I love that.
Yeah, sensitive New Age guy. Never heard it.
I've never heard that. That's awesome. I'm totally going to use that. I'll give you credit though.
Yeah, I picked it from somebody else. Snacks anyway. It was very frightening for my ex-wife because she thought I'm gonna become part of some cult and move to India, and I abandoned them and no longer protect and provide. And I would have done that if I wouldn't have felt that responsibility and have a fairly well-paying job. It was very frightening for her, and I didn't realize that. So these relationships still can work if it is made conscious what's going on.
Right.
But most people don't know, because it creates fear or shame in the other partner. There's something called the fear-shame downward spiral. So if the man awakens to that, the woman will get afraid that he's no longer protecting and providing. And if the woman goes on this path, the male feels shame when she comes back and said, oh, today I met this amazing teacher and I want to go to this Tantra class, and there's all these interesting guys. And the person who's still in the biological purpose, of course, completely freaks out of not being good enough, right? He goes like, well, I'm working and maybe 100%. Even babysitting here that you can go to your transformational groups or spiritual groups, and then you come home and complain to me that I'm not as enlightened as the people there, right? And so if you consciously can manage that, but most people cannot do that. And then, I was lucky that we had an amicable divorce, but at least my wife said, I like you more now that you're this snag. But on the other side, she pulled back more and more because she got really scared about
and understandably.
I changed.
Yeah. I changed as well. Same thing happened to me.
That part I did not understand. I did not understand how to make her feel safe, and said, this is in addition, it's not instead.
Right. Yes, but that's such a beautiful model.
The pull then, no matter if it's male or female, towards people who are living this transformational purpose is, of course, also eventually so strong that you may fall in love with someone who is more compatible biologically and in your transformational purpose.
Right.
And then this is also how the concept of polyamory and which is a whole other can of worms, in a way emerged. But again, that takes a lot of maturity and self-security and psychological health in order to pull that one off. And the same happens actually when you go from transformational to transcendental purpose.
Right.
I have actually couples, and this is the only part where I don't like my model and my teaching. I do these online courses and I have couples, and sometimes specifically when we get to transformational purpose, sometimes, transcendental purpose, sometimes transformational, where they, one partner looks over and it's like, see, that's like, and the other goes like, so like, where I feel I bring up the incompatibility more than to help them to grow together in transcendental purpose, right? Where we create more goodness, truth, beauty, and functioning in service of others. And the world is so unique that it's often very unlikely that a couple who met at the biological purpose also shares the transcendental purpose.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
My ex-wife now is totally into growth stuff, 15 years later.
Right.
And my kids and we sometimes go like, yeah, Mom. It's like, yeah, we know. That's what Dad did 15 years ago. We try not to be condescending. And so I have
Of
this
course.
friend who said, why don't you get back together with her now that she's also interested in what you're interested? And I said, well, but she doesn't share my transcendental purpose.
Right.
And that's what I want now.
Right.
So that's the number one, what I look for in a partner is someone who shares my transcendental purpose and passion in supporting singles and couples in co-creating integral relationships. And then secondary is someone who's at a similar level of development so that she can challenge me in learning, healing, growing, and awakening further, and vice versa. And the third important thing is the biological purpose, because the pull of these other two purposes is so strong potentially that the biological, the looks in my case and things like that, and maybe for her, the looks and the money I have or don't have or whatever is no longer so important.
Right.
I often teach people that they usually do sexual selection from the biological purpose first and say, okay, that's a match. The sex is great and we're compatible in our expectations. Let's see if we also have the transformational. It's a little off, but we can kind of make that work. And then the transcendental, we have totally different talents and interests. Right? And what I say, turn this around and find a partner who shares your transcendental purpose first, what you're really passionate about, and then see if you're at a similar level of transformation, of growth in different lines, and then see if the biological also fits.
Fascinating. I love that. Turn it on its head. So this brings up the question then about, like we said earlier, so many people enter relationships when they're still in the biological mode, which usually means they haven't done a lot of the healing work to clear out trauma and, conditioning. And so that's another reason why, relationships break down is those come into conflict and there's shadow at work and there's too much resentment and anger that it just explodes. So how much would you recommend, individual singles doing the individual work of healing to get to a place of transformation first before they try to find their, twin flame or their transcendental purpose partner?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, the other thing is, it could also happen. The third case that we didn't discuss is you could, meet and marry in the biological and then move together, or one person and then the next moves into transformational, and they be on different paths, and they just, that's a reason why they split apart.
Yeah.
That's also.
So first of all, just looking at my daughters, and I don't want to pat myself too much on my ex specifically, but I mean, my ex and I, we both could not live out our talents. We were not supported as children to develop our talents. We had to fit into the mold of what our parents wanted us to be.
Very common.
And so I think modern parents, and I mean modern parents in the sense of being at a modern stage of development, and postmodern parents and the whole school system is now much more geared towards really supporting children and young people in developing their natural talents, much more than it was the case 20, 30 years ago. So my kids in their, mid-20s, early mid-20s, they already knew what their purpose is. And so I think it's much more likely for younger generations to know what their transcendental purpose is and to do the sexual selection that way.
Right.
But I'm 63 now, going on 64, right? So I'm a totally different generation where your natural talents, people were just like, unless you were super talented like a Mozart or something like that, and had a father who supported that. That wasn't so important. So yes, for people who do not know what their transcendental purpose is, they need people like you who support them in identifying that. And if they're single, I would say, if that resonates with you, if you're not so interested just in biological and transformational purpose, identify what you're really passionate and concerned about is, and where your deepest pain about the world meets your greatest gift, right? And where this intersection is, and what you want to contribute, and then live that purpose, right? Sometimes people say, well, Martin, you're not really, what is the word? There's no integrity there because you're teaching that stuff and you're single. I said, well, that's not the point. The point is that I feel I live my transcendental purpose, and I'm totally open to be in a relationship. And I probably could be in a relationship relatively quickly.
Right.
Well, it would take me a few days. But this is not at this level, not about being in a relationship.
Yes.
It's about being in the relationship, because I'm no longer interested in serial dating or in dating people who are not, or dating women who are not my equals and don't share my transcendental purpose.
That brings me to the question.
If you only want to live your biological purpose, of course, you have a huge pool to fish in.
Of course.
If you also want to share your transformational purpose, the pool gets smaller, but it also gets, there's fewer fish in the pool, but it also gets much bigger because you're at a higher level and you're more international. And if you're at a transcendental purpose, we're international here. I have students from over 30 countries, and they're also connecting with each other. So that's the advantage of the high mobility we have now in the internet, that we can easily meet people from all over the world.
Yes. Okay, so when you talk about the biological purpose and manifesting into or growing into transformational and transcendental, to me, there seems like there's many manifestations. There could be many manifestations of your transcendent. It's not necessarily one thing. 100,000. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, because I think people get caught in the idea, my purpose has to be this specific thing manifesting this specific way, and maybe the expression can manifest in many different ways. Was that accurate?
Yeah.
So how that maps though to, so when you're talking about a soulmate, or is there such thing as a soulmate? You're talking about finding somebody that shares that value in a similar manifestation. That narrows the pool significantly. So is there only one person or a handful of people that can match that role, or is it, you can find that with many different people, like this idea of a twin flame or a soulmate when it comes to relationships?
I think they're fairly unique. So there's 3 steps. One is your natural talent, and that's either you have a strength in cognitive intelligence, or more strength in empathy, or more strength in artistic creativity, or more strength in functionality. And usually we have one dominant and one secondary, and the other 2, like I cannot even draw a stick man.
Right.
I'm just like visually, forget it, right? Aesthetics. Martin, are you wearing this? Yeah, why not? Well, nobody dresses like that. Really, I do.
Awesome.
But aesthetics are important, right? And and I'm also, I'm very narrowly educated. I have a hard time learning. I'm not very cognitively intelligent. So I'm very practical, functional, and I'm also relatively empathetic. And so these are my natural talents. And then you, out of these talents, you develop skills, and you find your purpose. And my purpose I define as bringing people together to co-create. So that's the middle part. And then you have the expression of my purpose, and that was initially to bring people together to play in bands. I was always really great in you and you and you and you. We play together, right?
Yes.
And hold the band together. Then I had a business with 20 employees and 80,000 customers. So I knew how to bring developers and customers in the music business and connect them with technology. And now I have this passion of bringing people together to co-create healthy relationships. Right? So my talent and my purpose of bringing people together didn't change, but the expression of my talent and my purpose has changed.
Right.
The delivery.
Yes.
And so So the talents should be complementary, and that creates the suprasexuality. So ideally, I would find a partner, attract a partner who is more cognitive intelligent than I am, and who is more aesthetically intelligent as I am. Right?
Challenge
and
you in
then
those ways.
together in our combination of my, let's just assume that's true, empathetic talents and my practical talents of creating functioning systems, we complement each other to have basically together the highest level of talent expression in these four crucial areas. And that's all there is in humans, really. It's cognitive intelligence, empathy, aesthetics, and functionality. That's it. Can look at any philosophy, at the Nobel Prizes, everywhere you look, Bhaskar, Kant, Hegel, Wilber, you name it, they all identify these four. And so if they're complementary, right, that creates the attraction. And then if they align behind a shared purpose, right, in my case, bringing people together to co-create, right, now the expression, somebody may say, oh, I'm already doing that, but I do it in a filmmaker. The other day we had the idea of a bookstore where the books would be sorted by level of consciousness development. Right? Cool. I don't know what her expression exactly will be,
right,
as long as there is this desire of bringing people together to co-create. And somebody else may have a passion with plants, doing something with gardening or plants, and other people with surfing, and other people with music, and other people with whatever it is. And so it's this. That's why this book got so thick. The Sex, Purpose, Love book is like 800 pages.
Oh, wow.
The purpose part is whatever, 400 pages of that.
Amazing.
That we figure out what is complementary and creates attraction and synergy, right? Coming back to making money, right? Because now you combine the talents that you don't have and express in your purpose. You combine that with someone where you lack the talent, they have the talents, and that makes you so much more powerful and effective as a couple. But then the delivery has to be aligned, right? So you need to find then a combination where you can really synergize and not distract each other from living each other's purpose.
Wow. This is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, Martin. This has been fantastic. I feel like we could go on forever, but it has been an hour already. So I'll be cognizant of your time and let you go. I do have one more question for you, though. And this is one I like to ask all my audience. It's a tricky one, or my guests. If you were to take all of your experiences, all of the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained, and distill them down into one message or one sentence, what would it be?
Well, become clear about who your soulmate is, so you can express it in one sentence. And once you attract him or her, be grateful to Spirit or God or whatever that brought you together, and make the world a better place. That's it.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Martin.
And I also shout this out to all single people, right? In my soulmate module training, find the 3 most important things that you want to share with a partner, and don't be shy to broadcast that into the world. Right? Just as I said, what I'm envisioning in a partner, because that's how now we attract people. But you need to be very clear about what you're looking for in order to attract it or find it.
100%.
And then be joyous and be grateful that you're blessed with that.
Aho, brother. Yes, Martin Ucik, thank you so much. Would you like to let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, it's Integral Relationship, without an S at the end, integralrelationship.com.
Okay, excellent.
That's
and your
it.
book, Sex, Purpose, Love?
Sex, Purpose, Love. That's the second book.
Excellent.
And that's based on my first book. So that's called Integral Relationship. And initially it was a manual for me, because I had to learn how to date Northern Californian New Age women. And then there were other men interested. And so I made it into a relationship for men.
Amazing. I will, of course, put all those links in the show notes. Martin Ucik, thank you so much for your time and sharing
Thanks,
your wisdom
Patrick,
and
for having
magic.
me.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Much love to everyone.
Yes, I feel like there's so much more to discuss, so I'm sure we'll have you back on someday.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, please do subscribe, rate, and review. For more information and show notes, head on over to being-podcast.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, live your being.